head into the papers now, see what the stories that are making headlines across Nigerian papers. Joining me via Skype is lawyer and social development advocate Jide Ologun. Jide, good morning. It's good to have you join me now.
Good morning, Mr. Mike.
Great. All right, let's begin with News Direct. News Direct newspaper says the Senate approves Buhari's $5.513 billion external borrowing request. Raises oil benchmark, cuts production output, passes amended 2020-2022 medium-term framework, and confirms appointment of 37 nominees of Federal Character Commission others, as Buhari seeks confirmation of REC replaces dead nominees on FCC. You're all this on the front page of the News Direct, and certainly I'm sure Jide would like to talk about this issue of borrowing that is also of great concern to many Nigerians. The next paper we're looking at now is the national economy. The national economy says Nigeria's drive for port expansion, decongestion gains traction with IBOM deep water PPP. A port expected to handle petroleum products, vehicles, and others. Okay, that's what you see at the on the national economy. From there, let's go to the Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper says Nigeria rallies support for Africa Development Bank President Akumi Adesina, and I'll stand by you, PMB. That's the President Muhammadu Buhari assures multilateral banks boss, and says the Nigerian government will work with other African leaders, stakeholders to ensure his re-election. Reps ask banks board to disregard call for fresh probe. Okay, these are all the stories you see on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Okay, from there, let's go to Daily Times. Daily Times says, Daily Times newspaper says federal government releases guidelines for reopening of worship centers, and says churches, services, mosques, or church services, mosque prayers must not exceed 1 hour. It reveals that 812 health workers have been infected with COVID-19. And Lagos, Kaduna, Oyo say worship center remains shut. Okay, those are stories on the front line of the Daily Times. Blueprint is the last paper we're looking at now. COVID-19 cases. Nigeria ranks third in Africa, as the federal government is saying this. It says that 812 health workers, NCDC staff infected. It raises the alarm over improper PPEs, nose masks disposal. The eased lockdown doesn't mean COVID-19 is gone. 20 Lagos local government area account for 60% cases. You find all that on the front page of the Blueprint. All right. Okay, let's get to the issues. Jide, I'm going to bring you here now on the story on the front page of the News Direct that says that Senate approves Buhari's $5.513 billion external borrowing request, and certainly raises oil benchmark. And we know that the oil benchmark was predicated at $20 per barrel, is now being raised to $28 per barrel by the Senate, and also cuts production output to about 1.8 million barrels per day. Now, borrowing, certainly, economists and all those who know all the figures and what it means say that there's nothing wrong in borrowing. But Nigerians are still very concerned with how at the rate at which Nigeria is borrowing, pegging it against what is on ground and what people are seeing. What do you say?
I quite agree that there is nothing wrong with borrowing, but there are a lot of things wrong with mismanaging what we have borrowed. And you must agree with me that if we compute all the amounts of money Nigeria has borrowed locally and internationally, by now we should be the capital of prosperity in the world. That's where my concern lands. There was a report in February 2018 that Nigeria needs 4.5 trillion naira annually for infrastructure in view of limited access to international borrowing, revenue coverage, and competing priorities. And you ask the big question, what are these competing priorities? What has been our priorities? I am in the group of those who believe that if we have been wise with our resources in this nation, we won't have any business going on this massive borrowing we are doing right now is even to service budget deficits, which is quite interesting. On the 20th of January 2020, there was a report that FD records 1.14 trillion budget deficit in 3 months. And you see, let's focus on the specific area of our national life that we must work on. There are 5 stages of business growth every company or nation should go through. We talk about the development stage, the business plan. We discovered oil in 1956 in Olebiri. So that may be the start off for the development stage of what do we do, just like Dubai also discovered oil. Then you move to the next stage, which is the start-up stage. The first refinery in this country was commissioned, I think, in 1965. What have we done? Now we have 4 refineries that are moribund. In fact, the Senate is querying the NNPC now for our unnecessarily high cost of production. You see, and the third stage is growth rate, growth stage. Have we grown the capacity of the nation with all we have been borrowing, with all we have been generating? And the next one is expansion stage. Look at what has happened to China. I said it. The per capita consumption of kilowatts electricity in China in 1971 is far, far ahead of what we recorded 45 years after. You see, and the 5th stage is the maturity stage. Let me ask you, Mr. Mike, what stage are we now as a nation if we are the capital of poverty? We keep borrowing and borrowing, talking about the same infrastructure. How much have we recovered from the Abacha lake? I'm sorry, Abacha asset, according to someone in Abuja who said it's not lose his asset. So we need to get serious. And the big question Nigerians are asking now, including my good self and the youth in this nation, that who's going to pay back this debt? It's really shameful. I draw your attention to the fact that my great nation spent 11 trillion naira in 6 years of full subsidy. Exporting crude oil, refining it abroad, creating jobs and businesses for them, even losing some byproducts to them, and creating poverty in Nigeria. So I wish my government the best. But let's just conclude on this premise that in 2015, I think the total indebtedness of my great nation was about 12.6 trillion naira. Today, it's far above 25 trillion naira. So you can do the calculation and ask the question, are we really making progress for the question? And it saddens me that quite a chunk of our resources have been channeled into fighting insecurity, and it's such a big trouble for us. But I hope that someday the resourceful leadership will start engaging our overflowing resources in this country. Mentioned it before, in Zamfara State alone, the gold deposit in Zamfara State can earn that state $2 billion annually. What have we done? The legal miners coming to exploit us, and the government is even admitting. It was in the response of NNPC that one of our problems is oil theft and different kinds of moribund facilities to keep doing turnaround maintenance. Have we forgotten quickly the $25 billion scam that was prompted in NNPC and got covered up? So we need to wake up as a nation, really. That's my position.
All right. We look forward to greater days. Certainly, it's not easy to chart the course and the way it is with all the complexities, but we still hope for the best. Thank you very much, Jide Ologun, for your time on the program. All right, let's head into the papers now, see what the headlines across Nigeria are saying this morning. I have with me on Skype lawyer and social development advocate Jide Ologun. Jide, good morning. Nice to see you on. Great. Now let's begin with the News Direct this morning. News Direct is saying Senate approves Buhari's $5.513 billion external borrowing request. Raises oil benchmark and cuts production output, and all of that. You see that on the front page of the News Direct. Now from there, let's go to the Blueprint newspaper that says COVID-19 cases, Nigeria ranks 3rd in Africa. The federal government is saying this and says 812 health workers, NCDC staff infected, and raises alarm over improper PPEs and nose masks disposal. Eased lockdown doesn't mean COVID-19 is gone. Certainly not. 20 local governments in Lagos account for 60% cases. You find that on the front page of the blueprint. Now, Leadership newspaper is the next. Now, Nigeria rallies support for Africa Development Bank President Adesina. I'll stand by you. PMB assures multilateral banks boss and says Nigerian government will work with other African leaders, shareholders to ensure his re-election. Reps ask banks board to disregard call for fresh probe. All right, these are some of the issues we'll be talking about with Jide when the discussion opens shortly, and that's a Leadership newspaper. Now, Daily Times is next. It says federal government releases guidelines for reopening of worship centers. Says churches or church services, mosque prayers must not exceed 1 hour, and reveals that 812 health workers have been infected with COVID-19. And Lagos, Kaduna, Oyo say worship centers remain shut. And that's Daily Trust. National Economy is next. And he says Nigeria's drive for port expansion, decongestion gains traction with IBOM deep water PPP. Port expected to handle petroleum products, vehicles, and others. It's really interesting there. And then from there, let's go to the last paper now, Daily Trust. It said COVID-19 uncertainty as Nigeria's cases cross 10,000 line. It's quite significant, NCDC saying, and how the situation deteriorated in states. And it's quite interesting on the breakdown on the front page of the infographic that the breakdown really explains and simplifies the entire data on the front page of the Daily Trust. Now, Jide, let's go to this story on Leadership newspaper. There's a story here, and the story there says Nigeria rallies support for African Development Bank's president Adesina. Now, the point there is there has been this controversy in the last week about the probe and the call for the U.S. State Treasury Chairman to, or Department Treasury to, calling for independent investigation of Adesina after he has been investigated by the Ethics Committee as laid down by the bank and found not guilty, and he was exonerated. Talk to us basically about this. Adesina himself has said that this is basically all about his recontesting bid. This is why this is coming up. What do you say?
This is a matter of corporate governance and, of course, international diplomacy. That is why I'm so glad that our president has stepped in, like many other African presidents. It's good to go back to the history of the African Development Bank. It came out as a post-colonial structure. It was founded in 1964 by 23 African governments then, and it had about 3 sections: the African Development Bank, the African Development Fund, and the Nigerian Trust Fund. So you can see the major role that Nigeria plays in this structure. And the mission is to fight poverty, improve living conditions on the continent by promoting investments, both in the public and private sectors, in capital projects and programs, and can even give technical support in ensuring these investments are delivered. And the motto of African Development Bank summarizes it: building today a better tomorrow. And our great Adesina, who was a minister in Nigeria, performs excellently in the agricultural sector, has been the president, and he succeeded Donald Kaberuka, who served 2 terms that ended in August 2015. So if he is allowed to miss that opportunity of 2 terms, it should be a tough one for Nigeria, considering the fact that he has done so well in moving the African Development Bank to a higher rank. But you expect that we have all these politics, particularly where you have the USA, and you know that the USA is playing the big brother around the world now. So it's now left for Africa because, as we all know, it's African Development Bank. It's not American Development Bank. So it's now left for African government to rally support around Adesina to ensure he completes the second term. And having said that, it's also a time to try and evaluate Adesina has been the president of African Development Bank in a full term. What have we benefited? I have been monitoring him. He has extended a lot of support to Nigeria. But what have we made of that support? There are some African countries who have succeeded in completing projects in their communities, talk of electricity and other projects. But what have we, as the domiciliary country now, if you allow me, benefited from this? And so if he returns, it's a big question we must answer, because whether we like it or not, the world is moving on. And we know we have this Agenda 2030 that wants to ensure that poverty is drastically reduced by year 2030. And I'm talking of the United Nations Development and Sustainable Development Goals. So more than trying to ensure that he returns to office in second term, we also should look at how can we maximize the fact that we have our own son as the president of the African Development Bank.
All right, Jide Ologun, thank you so much for your time on the program. In fact, Nigeria is the biggest single shareholder of the bank with about 9.1% share of the African Development Bank, followed by the United States that has about 6.5% share of the African Development Bank. Thank you very much for your time on the